Hello and welcome to this edition of Heritage Highlights, an ongoing series of brief talks focusing on key items from the collections held at Norfolk Heritage Centre, which is on the second floor of the Norfolk and Norwich Millennium Library. My name is Rachel Ridealgh and I'm the Local Studies Librarian for Norfolk Libraries. On Friday, 8th of May 2020, we're marking 75 years since Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, in 1945. VE Day was a national holiday which celebrated the end of the Second World War in Europe. This week's Heritage Highlight is an image showing one of the many ways in which women supported the war effort during World War II. I wanted to take this opportunity to remember Norfolk's women who've worked tirelessly in many different ways during the war. With thousands of men away serving abroad in the armed forces, women in Britain took on a variety of jobs. They played a vital role on the home front, keeping households running and families supported. After 1941, women were also called up for war work, to work as mechanics, engineers, munitions factory workers, air raid wardens, bus and fire engine drivers. Initially, only single women in their 20s were called up, but by mid-1943, about 90% of single women and 80% of married women were working in factories, on the land as part of the Women's Land Army, or in the armed forces. Many women were also called up as civilian volunteers to the Women's Voluntary Services. This group of women in this picture here are the Mayoress of Thetford's knitting party. And they're showing off their knitted garments on tables in the Guildhall in Thetford. And behind them you can see paintings from the Dewleap Singh collection. So at this time, Mr. G.E. Lambert, who was head of W&G Lambert Limited, the motoring engineers, was mayor of the town. And his wife, as part of her duties as mayoress, established a knitting group for the war effort. During the war, 1 in 10 British women belonged to Women's Voluntary Services, or the WVS as it was more commonly known. The group was a key part of the home front, including establishing knitting and sewing circles for company and for women also to feel part of the war effort. They produced millions of pairs of socks, balaclavas, jumpers, gloves and general comfort items for the troops. Sometimes it was reported that women would include a little friendly note in with their knitted items too. The WVS were the official sock darners to the British Army and Navy, with more than 3 million items mended annually. They set up and ran groups teaching servicemen how to mend and repair their uniforms too. They also knitted blankets and items for people in air raid shelters. Wool was hard to get a hold of at this time, so they organised wool drives to raise money to buy materials that were needed. 75 years later, many of us still enjoy creating and crafting useful items, and the current drive to make face masks, scrubs and other useful items for people during the COVID-19 crisis is reminiscent of the efforts of these women during World War II.